Welcome everybody to the show. My name is Dwayne, and today we're going to be looking at Thomas Rousseau, the founder of the Patriot Front. He recently did an interview, very eye-opening interview.
An African may have lived, worked, and even been classed as a citizen in America for centuries, yet he is not American, okay?
Yes.
And I'm going to give you my reaction to the video right now.
What do you think, like, if you were to break down what you believe in, do you want America to be a place where it's all white nationalists and nobody else that's not a white nationalist will be here? Would that be an ideal situation for you?
Not necessarily, and I believe that might be a bit of a leading question, but when you're talking about that statement in particular, and it is from an older version of the manifesto, it has been updated and clarified, but when you look at different groups in America, blacks have been very much culturally, economically, socially, and even legally distinct from what we call white Americans, or I simply refer to as Americans, for the entire history of this country. And from the 1600s to the 2020s, there are groups in this country that are very distinct. And when I say American, I'm not referring to purely as a citizen, but I'm referring to a member of the American nation, which I believe is a cultural, as an ethnic group, just like Iranian, just like a member of any country from Europe. But I believe we should treat the native, true-born population of America in the same way that other countries are purely allowed to recognize that somebody from this country has a unique cultural background. And this isn't to say that blacks are not here, that they do not have a unique culture on this continent. It is simply to say that they are so distinct, both racially, economically, socially. Segregation still exists de facto today. Many communities are largely one or another population. I believe these differences are so distinct that we ought to consider them as different nations, perhaps within the same government.
Okay, so what does that really mean? Going back to my question.
Sure.
What does that really mean? Gosh. He laid it down in very clear terms. And let me just get some of the points there. This and by the way, this is 2024. This is not somebody talking in 1890. This is 2024. So don't tell me that this view is dead and all that type of thing. Now, a couple of points. First of all, he's absolutely right in the sense that blacks and whites are distinct from each other. And this country was not set up for blacks. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be real about this. This was set up, and it was set up for hundreds of years. It was only until the 1960s, really, that things started to change. And blacks who were already here, and as well as new immigrants, black and brown immigrants coming in, opened things up. But before that, this was a white country. We know about the naturalization law, which he even talks about. So this is a very important point to understand. Now people will say, "Oh, well, that was back then. That's not how America is now." And he says towards the end there that America is still segregated today. 2024, ladies and gentlemen, is still segregated. Now check this out. If you look at the 2020s, this is a census demographic data map, right? And this is really nice because you can look at it according to race, as you see over here, and you can see where people reside in the United States of America. You can see where African Americans live today. They're pretty much in the southeast, right? Where are the whites? Well, let's take a look. The whites are everywhere else, if you look at the numbers, than the southeast. You can see right there in the southeast, they're not there in the densest population. They're everywhere else. Now, it's not to say whites are not there in the south, in the south, so-called deep south, but you can see clearly that that's a difference. Now, people will say, there's a large white population, everything. Okay, well, let's go into some of these places, right? Let's take the example of Georgia. Georgia is a big one right now. Let's go into Georgia. Right, Georgia is right here. Let's get Georgia on the map here. Let's zoom in. Now there's Georgia, right? So we can see here in Georgia, right? Remember, we're still on the white. So the whites are not in this area in the north here where my cursor is, right? Roswell, Sandy Springs, Atlanta, South Fulton, Macron. Trying to remember these places. Columbus, Albany. That's where whites are not. Where are the blacks? The blacks are in those areas. All the areas that we highlighted here, the whites are not there, the blacks are there. And this is in a state where there's a large black population, right? I picked this on purpose. I didn't want to pick a state like Utah or something like that, where there's no black people, and then showed, but you can see right there that in a state like Georgia, for example, it's still de facto segregation. Okay, so this guy is right. We're already living apart, even in America today, So this is not some 1890 thing. This is 2024, which America is still de facto segregated. Okay, and like I said, I'll put a link to this map. You guys can go and take a look in every single state. Just zoom in and see where black people are compared to white people, and even Asian and American Indians and all that. You'll see everybody lives in their own particular areas. There's certain areas where everybody lives. Now, I'm not saying there's no mixing whatsoever. There's still black people in the white areas. There's still white people in the black areas. But generally speaking, it's distinct.
So what do I have to be fully American in your eyes?
You personally?
Anybody.
So an American, I believe, is a member of the European race, any of the nations of the European race. And they not only...
Bam! Okay? This is 2024, guys. And I know you guys are going to think that this guy is a minority, he's a white supremacist, he's on the fringes. Wait, don't go yet.
You aren't American simply by being a member of the European race. You have to have lived in America and assimilated to the American culture, the American...
Okay, so an American, it's not just simply the fact that you belong to the European race. That's not enough, right? Because now he's saying that you have to have lived in America, you have to assimilate into the culture of America. So it's important to understand that.
American heritage, which is harder to do nowadays because our culture has been so diluted. Things have been made much less sincere, I believe, when we look back at our history. So somebody not only a member of the European people, but also specifically a member of the who has assimilated to the American nation, just like anybody might assimilate.
Got it. So,
boom. Okay, now I know this is going to upset a lot of people. But this is, people still believe this in 2024. This is why I'm highlighting this thing, because a lot of times people will say that this type of viewpoint is the old way. No one thinks like that anymore. And I'm showing you that here's someone who does think this way. And don't think that this guy is just by himself sitting in a room with his viewpoints. Okay, this guy represents a significant amount, and we're gonna get into that, and I'm gonna show you that he represents a significant amount of the way that Americans, in his definition, European cultural assimilation, think.
I think we have different ideas on what necessarily constitutes naturalization.
Okay.
Which is more of a natural process as opposed to a legislative process. And any attempt by the government to make that a legislative process is, I would think, a measure to coincide with the recognition of the natural process, because nations are natural things. If you started the world over right now and you put a bunch of people in a bunch of places on Earth, you would end up with nations. They would be different nations, but you would have nations, because within human nature, given to us by whatever creator somebody might believe in, there is a social aspect and there is a hierarchical aspect. We form different cultures. We form hierarchies, and from our hierarchies extend governments. And from our various social collectives, we form families, communities, nations, and then ultimately races. And these are all natural outgrowths of the human mind and body. And me as a nationalist, I want a government which recognizes and upholds these natural truths instead of what we see today, especially with the transgender pathology. People are trying to play God. People are thinking that human beings and culture and heritage and everything up until now is just something that, like clay, that you can infinitely mold and cast people into these things where they're infinitely malleable. It's not true.
I agree with him 100%. Okay, I agree with him 100%. And I consider myself a black nationalist, to be honest with you. You know, not a black supremacist. And we'll see in a minute whether, you know, he is a white supremacist. He's definitely a white nationalist. But I think he is representing that old view of America, which, like I said, it's not really old. It continues.
I don't think ethnic and cultural diversity help a country. I think they...
Bam. Okay? I don't think ethnic and cultural diversity help a country. Don't tell me that this man is a minority and he's the only one who believes this.
Impact negatively civic engagement. And there are some forms of diversity that are good. Like if you're trying to build a house, right? You want the diversity of having a bricklayer, a plumber, an electrician, and an architect. But if you're trying to build a house, you don't want 10 people who don't speak the same language, 10 people who are trying to build different types of houses. And that's...
And I know people will listen to this and say, no, this guy's a bigot, he's a white supremacist. No. Every other country in the world would say what this man is saying. Every other country, every other nationalism comes from the word nation, is an extension of the word nation. Every nation wants to protect its own culture and heritage, regardless of how that nation came into existence. The point is that it existed, and over a period of time, it developed its own unique identity and culture. And most people from these nations value that and want to maintain, keep it all the time. I've lived outside the country. Believe me, that's how it is. You know what I'm saying? People want to protect their culture and their heritage. And it's no different right here in America. And all I'm saying is that blacks in America and Asians and other people must realize that this country has a cultural heritage. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, it does. Whether you agree with how it was established, the fact that they came in here and killed the Indians and enslaved the blacks and all that, it doesn't matter. It was still established, and there is hundreds of years of a cultural heritage in this country. And he's right. For a long time in this country was white only. Blacks were not even considered people. You know, so it's a tough thing, but I think we all, you know, I think it's important, I think personally, especially for black people, to really hear and understand this, because, you know, I'm an advocate of black people being nationalists in their own right and protecting their own culture and striving to have their own nation. That's what I believe. You know, second best is a nation within a nation. Let's see what else this guy says.
It's the type of diversity we have in the country today. We're not selecting people for skills, we're selecting people for votes, we're selecting people for economic reasons. You know, the Democrats are importing voters, right? Because every group that they're bringing in is voting more Democrat than they are Republican. And 90% of the people coming into the country are from places other than Europe, other than traditionally white countries. So there's a huge economic incentive, and there's a huge demographic and electoral incentive for that reason.
I mean, if one may say, why are you uncomfortable with that, since maybe even, you know, everybody that came here was an immigrant at one point. They came from somewhere, right?
No, this is the point that, you know, yes, everyone was an immigrant from some point, but there was a long period of time. Once again, I gotta say it, folks, because I think Patrick Bet-David, he doesn't get it. There was a long period of time where there was just one specific stock of people that were allowed to be American or American citizens. And those people had assimilated into the culture and built a culture. This cannot be denied. You know what I'm saying? This cannot be denied. And, you know, I think a lot of the times that black people and people who are not accepted as Americans, like this white European stock, right? I think a lot of the mistakes that we make is that we ignore what has traditionally been American, and we want to come and impose our own thinking of what is America. You know, oh no, America is a place where all different immigrants are. No, that only happened in 1960s. And it happened with a lot of opposition, by the way. But it was able to pass through and allow people to come in. And a lot of it was because of labor. You know what I mean? And anyway, I'm kind of going deep into it. But ladies and gentlemen, you know, listen to this, man. You know, one thing I want to say also is that when I first heard about the Patriot Front, I was like everybody else. This is a white supremacist organization. They want to kill black people. They want to kill Jews. They want to, all that stuff with the KKK. This is just another iteration of it. But if you listen to this guy very clearly, he's not coming off like that. He's coming off as a person who is a true nationalist of his country, like every other national would be and would say. You know, and that is the reality of the situation here, you know. So I don't want to make the video too long, but I just wanted to say that was just sort of like part one. I'm going to make a part two, so look out for that. Thank you all very much. Please leave your comments, like, subscribe, share, all the good stuff. I appreciate it very much, and see you on the next episode.